You're listening to the weekly Parsha podcast, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramah Beit Shemesh, Israel, 5776, 2016. This week, in Chutz La'aretz, we're going to be reading Parsha's Kedoshim, and there's a few questions I'd like to address, try to understand. The Torah tells us, Kedoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani. God says to the Jewish people, I want you to be holy because I am holy. And as we read this verse, as we ponder the concept of holiness, what is the idea of Kedusha? What is the idea of holiness? What is the idea of being Kadosh? And what is the idea of being Kadosh because Hashem is Kadosh? That Hashem is enjoining us to be holy because He is holy. What is the idea? What is the verse coming to teach us? And I'd like to share with you two different midrashim that address the idea of holiness and give us some hints so we can try to understand what is the concept of holiness, of Kedusha. The measure says like this, Davar acher yishlach ezecha mikodesh. The verse tells us, it's a verse in Psalms chapter 20, it says, La'anatzech mizmor David yancha Hashem b'yemtzor. God will answer you in your time of challenge. And Psalm 20, as our sages tell us, is speaking about the future time, it's speaking about the challenges of the coming of Mashiach, of the Messiah. Yancha Hashem b'yemtzor. God will answer you in the time of difficulty, of oppression. Yisagev Hashem l'kei Yaakov. The name of God will make you great. And it's important to know, as we start to evaluate this medrash, that the concept of Shemai, of God's name, which is making the Jewish people great, Shemai is always, God's name is the transcendent aspect. That we see that the nations of the world, they look at the Jewish people, all of the nations of the world will see that the name of God is called upon you. And as our sages say, it's referring to the fact that they will see the tefillin shel rosh, the head tefillin, which is placed on the head. They will see the holiness of the Jewish people, the Kedusha, the fact that God's name is placed upon us and they will fear us. So the name of God is the source of Kedusha. It's a source of holiness, of the transcendent reality which we bring down into the world through our maisim, through our mitzvah observance. And the verse then says, Yishlach ezecha mikodesh u'mitzion yisadeka. God will send His help from holiness, from that place of holiness. And from Zion will God give you support. What is the concept of Tzion? What is the concept of Zion? What is the concept of Kedusha? The verse here is placing them together, and the verse is doubling the language. It's saying the same thing twice. Yishlach ezecha mikodesh. God will send you help from holiness. U'mitzion, from Zion, which is also comparable to holiness, from Kedusha. Zion is the place of the Beis Hamikdash. It's the place of the Holy Temple. That's the place where your help is going to come from. That's where you are going to be supported from. So the Medrash is telling us, if we want to understand what is Kedusha, if we want to understand what is holiness, that's the place where the help comes from, as we're going to see. But if we want to understand Kedusha, we need to understand the concept of Tzion. We need to understand what is the idea of Zion, which is the place of the Holy Temple. Amar Rabbi Levi, the Medrash says like this. Rabbi Levi says, Kol tayves u'brachas v'nachames she'HaKadosh Baruch Hu asa litein liYisrael einon elo mitzion. All of the good things, all of the blessings, all of the consolations that Kadosh Baruch Hu, that God is going to give to the Jewish people in the future, they all come only from Zion. And here the Medrash is speaking about what's going to happen in the future when Mashiach comes, when the Messiah comes. So all of these things, all the good things that we're going to experience, the consolation, the final consolation, the Geula will come from Tzion, from Zion, from holiness, from Kedusha. Yeshua mitzion. The Medrash says salvation comes from Zion. Shenemar mi yitein mitzion Yeshuas Yisrael. The verse in Psalm chapter 14 verse 6 says, who would give, or would that it would be given from Zion, the salvation of Israel? Oiz mitzion. The Medrash says strength comes from Zion. Shenemar matei uzecha yishlach Hashem mitzion. The verse also in Psalms chapter 110 verse 2. The staff of your power, that power comes, Hashem is going to send it from Zion. Baracha mitzion. Blessings come from Zion. Also, as the verse says in Psalms 134 verse 3, Yivorechecha Hashem mitzion. God will bless you from Zion. Shofar mitzion. The blowing of the shofar, which we know heralds the advent of the Messianic age, that also comes from Zion. Shenemar, as the verse says in Joel chapter 2 verse 15, Tiku shofar b'tzion. Blow on the shofar in Zion. Talu v'racha v'chayim mitzion. The dew and the blessings in life, which are a reference to the Taltchiyah, that which is going to cause all of those who have died to come back to life. This all comes from Zion. Shenemar, as the verse says, Kital Hermon Shired al Hararei Tzion, like the dew of the Hermon that falls on the hills of Zion. Kisham Siva Shemes Habracha, that's where the blessings are commanded by God to come from. Chaim ad ha'olam, and life forever, the everlasting life, which is what we will experience. We will live forever when the Messiah comes. So that's something again which is associated with Zion. Torah Mitzion, the Torah, which is a description of those things that we need to do in order to connect to Hashem, to connect to God. This also comes from Zion. Shenemar, as the verse says in Isaiah chapter 2 verse 3, Ki mitzion teisei tzorah, from Zion shall come forth the Torah. Ezer v'siyum mitzion, and finally, the Medrash says that help and aid, assistance, comes from Zion. Shenemar yishlach ezecha mikodesh, as the verse says, this is a verse that we quoted at the very beginning, God sends His help from Kodesh, the place of Kedusha, and the end of the verse obviously is Mitzion Yisadeka, your support comes from Zion. And now the Medrash wraps up its statement and says, Mikidush Masim Sheish Biyodcha, from the holy acts that you have in your hands, Umitzion Yisadeka, and from Zion will come your support, Mitzion Masim Sheish Biyodcha, from the outstanding acts that you have in your hands. When you do something outstanding, which is the definition of the concept of Kedusha, Kedusha means that we separate ourselves. Now, it sounds like separating ourselves means we do something where we act ascetic. We go to the top of a mountain, we meditate, we disconnect from the world. But that's not the hashkafa of the Torah. The Torah doesn't want us. The intent of the pasuk when it says Kedoshim to you, that you have to be holy. Kadesh atzmecha b'muter loch, and even to make yourself holy by separating yourself from something which is permitted to you. But does it mean that I need to completely separate from this world? Does it mean I need to completely separate from the pleasures of the world and I need to be disconnected from others, be completely ascetic? That's not what the Torah means. But what is the Torah saying? What is the injunction of the Torah that Hashem says, be holy? And what does it mean that Hashem is saying, be holy because I am holy? Is God disconnected from the world? Or is God completely connected to every aspect that we see in the world? It seems to be a contradiction. Is He holy? Is He disconnected? Is He parish? Is He completely not connected to the world? Or is God completely connected to the world? What is the concept of Kedusha? What is the Torah telling us? It's also very interesting because what we see in this Medrash, that all of the good things, all of the blessings, life, the Tal Tchiyah, the Shofar, the ultimate redemption, all the good things come as a result of our connection to Tzion, doing outstanding things, being holy, being outstandingly holy, being connected to holiness, being connected to the Beis HaMikdash. All of the Torah, the relationship with Hashem comes through Kedusha. It comes by being connected to holiness. But what do we get from it? We get all these blessings. And we're not talking about just spiritual blessings here. We're talking about all the good things in the world. All the blessings of the world. So how are we to understand that this Medrash is telling us that by disconnecting, it seems, from the world, by being a Kadosh, by being holy, I get the blessings. I get the good things. I get all the special things of this world seem to be what I get. When we talk about Mashiach, we talk about the Messiah, we talk about the Messianic age. Our Chazal speak about it in terms of all the fruits have amazing taste. Now we don't even taste the tastes. The colors, we don't see the colors. When Mashiach comes, we talk about music. We talk about the taste of Eretz Yisrael, the fruits of the land of Israel. All these things are going to be in the future. We're going to have the ultimate connection to the physical. But it sounds like it's coming because we've disconnected from the physical. How are we to understand the implication of this Medrash? Now I'd like to share with you another Medrash, which is later on in this Parsha of the Medrash, Parsha Chav Daled, the 24th Parsha. We were just reading from the piece which is piece number 4. Now I'd like to take you to piece number 9, which at first doesn't seem to be connected, as usual, but the piece speaks about Yosef Tzaddik. It speaks about Joseph. And immediately my ears perked up as I saw this, as I heard this, because Tzion, which we've been speaking about till now, the concept of Zion, which is the holiness, the Kedusha, the temple, the Har Abayis, the Temple Mount, that place, the word Tzion, which denotes that place, is the same gematria, is the same numerical value as the word Yosef. Yosef also somehow is connected to the concept of Kedusha. He's the one who's able to separate himself from licentious behavior, from being with this woman who's trying to seduce him. he's able to retain his holiness, to retain his Parsha, to retain his separateness from her. And yet, interestingly, just as we said before, where there's a Kedusha, there's a separation, ultimately what happens to Yosef? Who does he marry? The Torah tells us he marries the daughter of Potiphar. The very woman who was trying to seduce him, Yosef marries her daughter, it seems. So there's this interesting paradox of the separation of Yosef, his disconnect from the physical, his disconnect from behavior which was immoral and inappropriate, but at the same time, Yosef has this ability to connect in the right way, in the right place, as we spoke about last week, as we spoke about the concept of knowing the right time, the right place for connecting to that in that type of way. So let's see the Medrash, which speaks about Yosef in the context of our Parsha. What does it say? It says like this. Arim Shem ben Lakish. Rish Lakish says, Shtei Parshiyas hichtiv lanu Moshe b'Torah. There are two different concepts that the Torah writes down that was written by Moshe Rabbeinu, by Moses. And we are able to understand them by looking at something that was said by Pharaoh in Sefer Bereshis, in the book of Genesis. The verse tells us in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 13, the Torah tells us that when we do what we're supposed to do, when we fulfill the mitzvahs, when we listen to God, when we have that relationship with God, so God tells us that you will be above. You will be on top. Everything will be great. Yachol kamoni. Now you might think that that means that we'll be so high up that we'll be as high as God. We'll be in that exalted space, that transcendent space where God is. Talmud Loimer, Rak. The Torah says, Vayisa Rak Lamala, and you shall be only above. Why does the Torah say only above? Lashon mute. Whenever you have the word Rak in the Torah, which means only, so it's coming to exclude something. It's coming to diminish the statement. Gedulasi lamala megedulaschem. The Torah is telling us that yes, you're going to be above. Yes, you're going to be exalted. But don't think that you're going to be as exalted as I am, says God. Your greatness will not be as great as my greatness. We see a similar concept, and we learn that this is true from Pharaoh, the evil Pharaoh, Shenemar. As the verse says, in regards to Pharaoh's conversation with Yosef, Yosef has succeeded in interpreting Pharaoh's dream to his liking. And indeed, Pharaoh is going to appoint him to be second in command. Atati al-Basi, he says, you shall be in charge of my home. You'll be in charge of all that goes on in my house, all that goes on really in my kingdom. Yachol kamayni, now you might think that you're going to be as great as me, says Pharaoh. Talmud Loimer, Rak hakise egdal mimeka. He says, you should know that only the throne will I make greater than you. Gidulasi lamala megidulascha. My greatness is greater than your greatness. Yes, you're going to be great. Yes, you're going to have amazing power. Yes, you're going to be in charge of the entire kingdom. I'm going to send people to you when they ask me questions. I'm going to say, do whatever Yosef says. But I'm the one who ultimately has the power. Your power is only a result of my power. So that's the first verse that we find, that we learn something from the way that Pharaoh speaks, and we understand that lahavdil, that God also speaks that way. V'haden Kedoshim to you. This verse that we have in our Parsha, that says, you shall be holy. Yachol kamayin. You might think that it's possible to be holy like God is holy, to be on that exalted, transcendent level like God. Talmud Loimer, ki kadosh ani. That's why the verse says, I am holy. Kedushasi lamala mi kedushaschem. Why does the Torah need to say, be holy because I am holy? What is the idea that I am holy? When God says, I am holy, God is saying, my holiness is always going to be exalted above your holiness. And we see this also from Pharaoh, Shenemar. The verse is, Vayomer Paro el Yosef ani Pharaoh. Pharaoh says to Joseph, I am Pharaoh. Yochel kamayni. You might think, what was Pharaoh coming to say? You might have thought that I'm giving you all this power, that you have the same power, the level of power as I do. Ani Pharaoh. He says, I am Pharaoh. My greatness is above your greatness. Yes, you're going to be great. Yes, you're going to have power. But never for a moment think that your power is yours. Your power is always a result of my power. I'm always going to be above you. I'm always going to be the one feeding you power. But the power is really mine. Now, I just want to share with you one last statement of the Medrash, which is really, really interesting. It says like this, Rabbi Yeshua b'shem Rabbi Levi. Rabbi Yeshua said in the name of Rabbi Levi, Me'ani shel basar v'dam. From the statement of I, which was said by a human being, Atalam made ani shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. I can understand the statement of I, which God says. Uma ani shel basar v'dam. When we find that there's a statement of I, which is said by a human being, Al yidei she'amar Paro Yosef ani Pharaoh. When Paro says to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, Zachal l'chol hakavod hazeh. What was the result of Pharaoh saying, I am Pharaoh? He was saying, I am giving you all of this honor. I'm giving you all the power that I represent. I am Pharaoh. I'm giving you all of my power. I'm giving it to you, obviously, as we said before, with a gvul, with a boundary. I'm always going to be above you. But because Pharaoh said, I am Pharaoh, the result of that was that Joseph received all of this great honor. When the statement that I am, that God says, I am, when that happens in the future time, the verse says, Vad zikna anihu. Verse says, until that time of elderliness, until that age-old time, which is a reference to the times of Mashiach, of the Messiah, I am. So Hashem says, in that time I will say, I am. Uchsiv koyam Hashem. The verse says, this is what God says, Melech Yisrael v'goy aloi. The King of Israel and the one who redeems them. Ani rishoyin v'ani acharoin. I am first and I am last. Mi balodai ein Elohim. And besides for me, there are no other gods. So God says, I am. When the Messiah comes, God says, I am. Alachas kama v'chama. Certainly it's going to be the same. That when Pharaoh says, I am Pharaoh, I'm giving you all of my power, Hashem also is saying the same thing. When God says, I am, God is saying, I am giving you all of my power. Amazing statement of this Medrash. And the Medrash is coming to explain, this is not explicit in the Medrash, but what's clear is that it's coming to say that that's what the verse means. When the Torah says, Kedoshim to you, ki kadosh ani, be holy because I am holy. God is saying, I have a certain power through my holiness. By being parish, by being separated from the world, I have a certain connection to the world. Paradoxically, this is the idea. Hold on to this idea. It's very interesting. It's very deep. God is saying, I have power in the world because I'm separated from the world. So too, I give you that power. Kedoshim to you, you shall be holy. So I was reading this, I was thinking, what is the concept of Yosef? What is the depth of the concept? And we've already begun saying the idea. But what is the concept of Yosef? What is his connection to Tzion? And the concept which we spoke about before, that all the blessings, all the good things, the geula, the redemption, the infusing of this world with spirituality. What is the idea that all comes from Tzion? It comes from Zion. It comes from Kedusha. It comes from holiness. What is the concept of holiness? What is the concept of Tzion? What is the concept of Yosef? To understand the answer to this question, I was thinking, when Pharaoh says to Yosef, I want you to be in charge of my whole house. I want you to have all of my power. That's an amazing, powerful statement. I mean, can you imagine? This is a question I've asked before, but can you imagine this guy comes out of jail? He's a criminal. He's been in jail for 12 years. He's a criminal. But he has some, he's a smart guy. He knows how to interpret dreams. He's intuitive. But you're going to give him all of this power? You're going to make him the ruler over the entire Egypt? No one's going to raise a hand or a foot unless he says so? What's the pshat? Like, what was Pharaoh thinking? What did Pharaoh see that convinced him that Yosef would be indeed someone who wouldn't think that his power is going to be beyond Pharaoh's power, that he would always know his place? How did Pharaoh know that? And the answer, I believe, is because when he asks him, he says, this is my dream. I've heard that you know how to interpret the dreams. The first response of Yosef is, Biladai, it's not me. The power that I have, the intuitive power that I have, is not mine. My abilities, my spiritual capacities, my talents don't belong to me. They belong to God. If there's going to be an answer to your questions, it's going to be God who's answering that. Yosef immediately showed in the first words that he said that he knows his place, that he understands that the power that he has is not his power. Pharaoh knew that he could trust Yosef with his own power, and that Yosef would respect the fact that Pharaoh is always above him. How did he know? Because Yosef already demonstrated that he has power and that he doesn't abuse that power. He doesn't claim the power for himself. He recognizes that the power belongs to God. So Yosef has an amazing ability. His amazing ability is that he has he's beautiful. He was a very handsome human being. He was someone who had physical beauty, and that comes with power. A person like that, there was a reason, as the Medrash tells us, there was a reason that Potiphar's wife kept trying to seduce him, because he had power over her, so to speak. She was drawn to him. But what was Yosef's true power? It was the Kedusha. It was his ability to say, no, I will not use my power in an inappropriate way. That's Kedusha. Kedusha is Prisha. It means separating in the correct place. It means, as we spoke about last week, it means recognizing that there's power. When there's a divine revelation, that's power. I'm bottled to Hashem. When Hashem reveals himself to me, if Hashem, I'd be at Har Sinai, I just bow. Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem hu Elokim. There's no other besides your God. That's real power. I do whatever he says. I'm drawn. But the amazing thing is that Yosef has the ability to say, even though I have this power, I know how to separate myself from the power. I know how to place the boundaries in the correct places so that I don't abuse the power. And Pharaoh says, I have heard that you are powerful, that you have this ability to interpret dreams, to understand the future, to know what's going to happen. And Yosef immediately says, it's true I have that power, but it's not my power. And I recognize that. I know how to separate myself from the power. That's Kedusha. That's Yosef. That's Tzion. It's in this world we see that there's holiness. There's a Beis Hamikdash. There's a temple, but you know what? You got to climb up onto that mountain in order to have access to that spiritual enlightenment, to have that access to a true relationship with Hashem. Kimitzi and Teitzei Torah, all of the good, that relationship, the Torah comes from that mountain. But it comes because there's a recognition that there's Kedusha, that there's holiness, that there's separation. There are boundaries where Kedusha applies, where relationships make sense, where it's appropriate to have that exalted relationship with Hashem even, and certainly to have relationships with others as they are appropriate. So Kedusha doesn't mean completely separating. It doesn't mean I don't do anything in this world. I don't have any relationship with this world. Other way around. God has a relationship with the world, but God is also separated from the world. The boundaries are very clear. There's Kedusha, there's holiness. It's exalted. Hashem is unbelievably exalted, and yet he gives life because he's exalted. There's a paradox. Because he is so high and so great, he gives life to every aspect of reality. When I connect to that aspect, when I have Kedusha, even Kadesh Atzmecha B'mutar Lach, the concept of making myself holy in that which is permitted to me, that means that I recognize that there are places, even in those things that are within the boundaries of what I'm permitted, there are places that I can still create even stronger and more refined boundaries. And the more I do that, the more I appreciate the places where it is mutarli, where it is permitted to me. The more I have boundaries, the more and this is the concept of modesty, the more I have boundaries, the more I have recognition of, the more I value something, the more I value it. That is the concept of modesty. When I value something, I place boundaries around it. It's not just hefker, it's not something that anyone can see. It's not just something that anyone can have access to, but rather it's something that I value, and I show that this is something which is precious. And so to the degree that I show it's precious, to the degree that I show that it's exalted, I recognize that this is a mountain, this is a Har Tzion, this is the mountain of Zion. Not everyone can come here, not everyone can access the mountain, not everyone can climb up this mountain. Mi ale b'har Hashem. Who can climb up on the mountain of Hashem? It's something which is exalted, which is powerful. It's not a free-for-all. To the degree that I recognize that there are boundaries, there's Kedusha, there's holiness, that allows me to access the beautiful holiness, the beautiful fruit, which indeed is connection, bringing down that holiness from a higher realm into this world. I get all the blessings. The concept of bracha is coupling. The word barech is 222, that's the gematria, because it's a coupling of the upper realms and the lower realms. But that happens because I've recognized that there are places where it's not appropriate for the coupling to occur. And I respect that. And I respect the holiness of it. And I respect the beauty of it. And to the degree that I respect it, and to the degree that I separate at the appropriate time, so when indeed I am allowed to come into a relationship, I receive it so much deeper, so much more beautiful, so much more special. So that's what the Medrash means when it says, "Mikidush ma'asim sheyesh biyodcha." Where does that help come from? It comes from Kedusha. It comes, I have that relationship with God because I have been mekadesh my ma'asim. I have made my actions holy. I have recognized that there are these boundaries and I respect the boundaries. And mitzion yisadeka. I do acts that are outstanding. I recognize that there are certain things that if I do these things, it recognizes the boundaries. So to the degree that I do those outstanding acts, to the degree that I separate myself in the appropriate time, the appropriate way, I merit to have all these blessings. I merit salvation. I merit power. I merit to have Torah, to have that relationship with God. The shofar, the geula, the redemption comes, the blessings, the trias hamesim, the bringing back of the dead, the reconnecting, the coupling of body and soul, the help that I need. All of those things come as a result of my recognizing here in this world that I can't always have everything that I want. I can't always have all of those amazing things. I can't always have all of those exalted spiritual experiences, but I will have them ultimately, as long as I respect now that I can't have them at every moment. That's Kedusha. So to the degree that I have Kedusha, ultimately, as we saw last week, I merit to have the Hashras Hashchina, the revelation of God's divine presence. And that's what we see. That's the concept of Yosef. Yosef went through the challenges. He resisted temptation for so long. And as a result of that, ultimately, he experienced his own personal geula, his own personal redemption. And ultimately, we all, to the degree that we respect those boundaries, we keep the Torah, we respect the boundaries of the mitzvahs of God's commandments, to that degree we will have that revelation in the future time. I want to bless you, and please bless me back. Hashem should help us to indeed be able to have this Kedusha, to be able to respect the boundaries, to be able to understand what are the places, how do we climb up this mountain. Hashem should help us get to the mountain of Tzion, to that Mount Zion. Hashem should help us that as a result, all of the blessings, all of the good things that come from Tzion, that come from Zion, that come from holiness, Hashem should give us that experience ultimately with the Bias HaMashiach, with the coming of the Messiah. May it be speedily and in our days. Thanks so much for listening. Have a good Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.